So Diablo 4 is coming out here relatively soon, almost imminent. And I felt like this was a good time to talk about something that I've seen a few other people talk about, which is what world tier difficulty you should play on when you're playing Diablo 4 pre-season, and how that is going to change post-season. Having said that, let's jump into the content. So I've seen a couple different people talk about this, and I was going to make some reaction content, but realistically there wasn't much there to react to. There's not really a lot of discussion here because the hard numbers realistically don't exist. So what level you should play on is really going to be more of a matter on how it feels to you when you're playing the game, and less of a, at this point do this, when this happens do this, and always do this. So what do I mean by that? Well, I think that when you start a fresh file, you should probably go ahead and run World Tier 1 right from the rip. The reason for that is because your character doesn't really have a lot going on. You're going to be using basic attacks against most everything you fight. As you sort of progress through, most of your XP is going to be coming from quest completion. And being able to knock those quests out as fast as possible is going to net you the most XP in the early stages on a fresh file. Now, once you get to the main town in Act 1, this is where I think things are going to start to change. I would say probably around level 5, as you're starting to get more skills, you might be tempted to go up to World Tier 2. And I don't necessarily think this is a bad thing. I think that from this point, you should probably toggle between World Tier 1 and World Tier 2, depending on how difficult things are that you are facing and how tough those fights are for you personally. The important part here, and I think the distinction that needs to be made for a lot of gamers, is playing on the higher world tiers, for the most part, will net most people more XP. There is a conversation to be had about min-maxing and what is sort of the fastest route to take. But most gamers do not fall into the fastest route. However, they take advice from people who do fall into the fastest route. And what ends up happening is they sort of take advice from people who are doing things in the most optimized way when they themselves are not. If you are not doing things the most optimized way, then listening to people who tell you how to do things the most optimized way will not net you the same results. So for most gamers, just going to World Tier 2 and staying on World Tier 2 will probably net them the most bang for their buck, because they are not minimizing their downtime, minimizing time running around, optimizing every last ounce of their build to make things the most efficient and the fastest way that it can be done. And I think this is a big point of the conversation that a lot of people miss. The big thing is, most people forget that if you are not the fastest, most efficient, then doing things to mirror the people that are isn't going to net you the same results. Most gamers will have some downtime. They might have to step away. They might have family commitments. They might have to travel back to town and go help out a spouse. Because of that, grinding the most efficient way through speed doesn't always get you the same results. And it is more than likely better for you just to take the more XP while you're doing the tasks that you're already going to do, because you are not going to be blowing through them at a breakneck pace. So at the end of the day, because there is no real tangible spreadsheet to show what is the fastest, best way to gain XP and how the RNG is going to affect you, your item drops, and things like that, I stick with my earlier recommendation, which is just change the difficulty as the game feels easier. If you unlock new skills or get a good legendary drop or get a new major skill for your class and you find that content now feels trivial, go ahead and bump it up to World Tier 2. Changing world tiers in Diablo 4 is very easy and it can be done on the fly, and you should utilize that to your advantage and help maximize your XP. If you're doing more mindless grinding, probably go to World Tier 2. However, if you feel like you're getting ready to fight some bosses or maybe a dungeon that you're a little bit slower at, drop it down to World Tier 1, blow through it, get that aspect, and move on. And I think that this is honestly the best way to approach it, and this is how most people should be saying to approach difficulty in Diablo 4 when it's your first playthrough on the campaign. Now, where this realistically changes is when you don't get the boost from the campaign XP. That's going to be in adventure mode, or once the seasons kick in, and or you're making a second tune and you're not doing the campaign. Because you're not doing the campaign, you are not getting the giant chunks of XP that you would normally get from completing the quests. And because of that, I would honestly just put it on World Tier 2 and forget it. There's no reason to go jumping back and forth. You're not going to get more XP from clearing quests any faster because you realistically don't have any. The next real big point of contention I think that we're going to have to talk about is when you go out of World Tier 2 and you start moving into World Tier 3 and subsequently moving from World Tier 3 to World Tier 4. There are hard limits placed showing at what point you should make those jumps. But in all honesty, you should make that jump as fast as physically possible for your character. Not because of the bonus XP, but because of the different tiers of drops. Going to World Tier 3 and then World Tier 4, each one of those jumps has a new sort of tier of loot that you can get that will push you further than the previous tier's loot. We're talking about ancestrals, uniques, and other items like that. You want to be striving for these as fast as possible. So what I am saying is these are the jumps that you want to make as soon as possible, and try to keep that in mind. So having said that, I feel like this is the conversation that should have happened and should be happening around what world tier difficulty you should play on as a gamer. You need to go in and do things that you're having fun with. But if you're trying to find the most optimal route, prior to World Tier 3, just go between World Tier 1 and World Tier 2 as you feel your strength allows. The only real exception to this would be if you are not completing the campaign, in which case it's going to make the most sense for you to just go to World Tier 2 and stay there. Hopefully this kind of gave you a little bit of information on the World Tier system and maybe where you should play when the game comes out, as the difference between World Tier 1 and World Tier 2 is mainly the difficulty of the monsters and the XP from killing monsters, and doesn't really have any major effect on your loot. Hopefully you liked the video. If you do like these types of videos, consider subscribing to the channel to see more Diablo 4 content in the future. And as always, have a great day.